Hello everyone and welcome. Since I've been asked this before and I haven't really made a video about this yet, what is it that actually makes Nanaka so incredibly powerful? Well, there are usually two types of overpowered characters. One is the overpowered character that it just does one thing so amazingly well that it doesn't matter if they have some glaring weaknesses in other places, because they just do what they do and they do it so well that they become overpowered. For example, Ashley is a really good example of this. She's just so amazingly good at blasting that it doesn't matter that she's probably not going to get a Magia out, or that she can't support other people that well outside of her connect. Doesn't matter. Blasting is so amazing, she's overpowered because of that. But you also have other characters that just do so many things so decently well that as an entire package, they just become overpowered. For example, a really good example of this is Tart. She does so many things so well that people call her overpowered. And Nanaka is basically very similar to that in that she does just so many things so well. Starting out, I have made a list of 5 aspects of what is it actually that Nanaka does so well that all together ends up making her overpowered. The first thing is, of course, she's a blast gorilla. Since Blast is the most powerful strategy in the entire game, I mean, it doesn't mean that Magia isn't good. Magia strategies are also really, really good, but Blast is usually across the entire game just faster, more efficient, takes less specialized characters to get out, less specialized but more for it. Blast Up is an amazing buff that only Blast has access to. There's a whole lot of reasons why Blast is across the entire board usually the best strategy, and she's a blast gorilla, so that's already one of the big pluses that Nanaka has under her belt. I don't even know if she has a belt, a sash? No. The second point, moving on, is that she has an element that on the North American server can take advantage of the Tercio slots. Of course, this is not something that the Japanese server has, but since most of the people watching this are from the North American server, yeah, she can stand on Tercio spots, which gives her amazing attack power, and that's just amazing to have. Next up, number 3, she has balanced stats, but is still focused on attack. So if you're going in PvP, for example, since you know that characters with low defense get attacked first, you still want to have some good baseline defense so that you don't get attacked immediately right away. And Nanaka does actually have decent defense for someone who's still kind of focused on attack. So she has decent attack, but still has decent defense as well. And we can compare that, for example, to a Holy Mummy, a character that people will call us pretty good character, right? Her defense is worse than Nanaka, and not just by like the 130 that you see right here. If you look at the Awakening bonus, Nanaka gets 7% on defense, and Holy Mummy gets only 5% on defense. So she actually only has like 300 or something defense less than Nanaka. So if both have the same Memoria, Holy Mummy actually gets attacked first against neutral element. So Holy Mummy would actually die way faster than Nanaka in Mirrors because she gets attacked first, meaning Nanaka is actually kind of a better character than Holy Mummy in that regard. Of course, it's not quite that simple, but at least in the regard of just surviving, she's doing a better job. She also has decent HP compared to something like Holy Mummy, who has like almost no HP whatsoever. That's also pretty good, right? It's just one example, but you can already see that her stats are actually pretty darn good. Her Memoria, I should have also mentioned her Memoria, by the way, when I'm talking about Blast Gorilla. She has Blast Draw as a personal, which is pretty darn good, and you should definitely have this at some point. I usually don't use it because I have usually like Meteor Rain plus damage up, so I'm personally not using this one, but definitely also a pretty good one. Moving on, number 4 as the reason why she is so amazing. Her connect is borderline broken. She has one of the best connects in the entire game, probably. We can look at this and we see Blast Up, 75%. That's pretty darn good. But at the same time, you think to yourself, wait a second, Blast Up doesn't really do much though if the enemy has high defense, or in general, Blast Up on someone who has a low attack doesn't do much, but don't worry about that because it also gives attack up. And the combination attack up and Blast Up is like the second best combination in the entire game when it comes to just dealing damage. The best combination, by the way, is Blast Damage Up plus Defense Ignore. And there is a character who has Blast Damage Up plus Defense Ignore. I have her 4th slot on the Japanese version. It's Kazumi. She's probably the best blast support collecting the entire game, and almost no one has her. Anyway, this is like the second best combination of effects that you can have for just pure damage dealing with blast discs. Blast damage up plus attack up, that's absurd. By the way, just very quickly about defense ignore, because there's other characters that also have defense ignore, like Sakurako, who is coming up. Defense ignore is borderline broken on PvP and like completely one-shots characters. It's absolutely hilarious how amazing that is in PvP. Anyway, so she has an absolutely ridiculous connect as well. It also removes debuffs. It didn't even need to do this. The developers just said to themselves, oh, it's not good enough yet, it's not good enough, we need to make it even more powerful, remove debuffs. And important to note, not status ailments, removes debuffs. That's the blue debuffs, the blue symbols. It does not remove purple debuffs, like Curse, for example, it does not remove those. So that's pretty darn good, right? What about her Maya and double? I don't actually care about these. I pretty much never ever use these at all, so they're not part of the list, because you're not going to use them. It's like a weakness that Nanaka has, but the thing is, she does everything else so well that it doesn't really matter if she has like one tiny weakness. And the fifth point that makes Nanaka overall just so darn good is that she has low rarity. She's a base 3-star character, meaning most people just get her at some point during the gacha, and once you have her, you can use destiny bottles, you can use Magia chips to give her slots. So most people who've played for like longer than a month probably have a 4-slot Nanaka lying around, unless they were like really sad and didn't get them. But if you got them in like after like a month of playing, or like 2 months, you definitely have a 4-slot lying around. So just having everyone having access to her so easily is also pretty darn good. So you can see just across the board she has a lot of things that make her pretty darn good. Now, before I just end it all here, I have something special. I'm going to show some gameplay, because I've put together this Nanaka right here, and I'm going to tell you a few things about Nanaka, and I have a special section at the end of this video as well. So I'm going to take this Nanaka for a spin, but I will actually tell you guys how to calculate exactly how much damage, or how much attack at least, a character has on paper, because this attack value right here, as you might know from other videos, is not completely correct. She doesn't have 8,136 base attack, because this base attack actually gets the awakening bonus, which is not shown here. But with the awakening bonus, Nanaka actually has a base attack of 8,706. That is her actual base attack, meaning that if you put a Memoria on top of that, her actual attack that it should show right here on the left is 12,931. That's almost 13,000. That's pretty darn good, right? But it gets better. We are not quite done yet, because she's standing on a Tercio spot. So at this point in the calculation, you put Tercio on top of that, plus 25%, and it gives us 16,164. It's over 4,000 more than it shows right here. There's a bit more that comes into this, but for now, like I said, we're going to dive deeper in this at the very end of this video, but for now let's just take it for a spin. I'm going to go into a quest. I might need to cut the video right here until I can find a good support, because I want to take a very specific support with me. I want to take a support Nanaka with me as well, and do Nana, and just go completely ham, but I might not have one immediately available to me right now. So I might be a cut right here until I find a suitable Nanaka. Okay, so we're going to head into the Chapter 9 Challenge quest. Episode 38, I think it is. Yeah, Mifuyo Part 9. This is just a pretty big boss fight of something that we're neutral to, so we're going to do this without any sort of elemental advantage. And my goal will actually be, I'm going to have my support hopefully get 3 discs on turn 1, so I can load up a connect on the support Nanaka, and I'm going to show you the power of the Nanaka connect by connecting hopefully a blast Puella combo onto my main Nanaka, and I'm even going to end on a charge disc. And just for sure, I'm going to also use Quell Bloom just to also show you guys that we're not going to take any damage whatsoever on turn 1. So loading up a connect, getting a charge disc in there, the enemy is going to do no damage because they got a Quell Bloom, and then hopefully turn 2, we're going to turn this Uwasa into a tiny paste. Going to smush it down, but we need to get lucky to actually get the Blast Puella connect onto our Nanaka. Yeah, so let's see what happens. Oh darn dang, we got it. So some people might have wondered, looking at my Memoria, why did I not take a Blast Memoria with me? Basically, you can only get 75% blast up total, as 100% blast up total, sorry, and we're already getting 75%. So there's only 25% more blast up that we could potentially get. Instead, I took plus 25% damage up, which is actually exactly the same. then getting 25% blast up, but it also gives reduced damage, 5 for 3 turns, which is, it also gives this damage up for 3 turns, so this is actually more long term, which is pretty nice. Anyway, so for damage maximization, at this point it didn't matter if we took blast up or not, because we're maxed anyway. So if I had different memoria that, for example, in my Bible, like I said earlier, I would have taken my Bible, so there's more I can still do. Or I don't have a maximum broken sword which rises space between light and dark. If I had that, we would be dealing even more damage. But even without that, let's see how much damage Nanaka Connect can do. Ooh! Ooh! Ah, damn! Now the cool part is, the reason I did so much damage is not just because we're Nanaka. It's half and half. Half of that is, the connect is absolutely broken. So much attack up and so much blast up in one, into a blast puella, just explodes enemies' brains and splatters them across the screen. But secondly, we also have someone who can take advantage of Tercio bonus. So this theoretically would also work if, let's say, for example, the Uwasa had horizontal lines instead of vertical lines and we were using it on a Yachio. Yachio would also deal very much similar damage. Imagine if we connected to a Tart. Tart would also do similar damage, just that Tart wouldn't have quite as much attack up because she's not standing on a Tercio tile. But the connect does one half, the Tercio tile puts the cherry on top. So you can see the damage is absolutely absurd that Nanaka can put out, both by giving other characters absurd damage, but also being able to deal absurd damage herself because she's a blast gorilla who's standing on a Tercio tile. Amazing. Now I'm going to do this little bonus section here at the end for some like mathematics stuff. If you don't want to see that, then thank you for watching and hit that subscribe button and see you next time. But for the rest, I'm going to go into some maths right now. And we're going to go into some maths here. So basically the idea behind this exercise is I've done this entire video about the damage calculation and I've done some maths surrounding that, but it was a really long video, and maybe the idea behind that video should have been that you guys can do some maths at home instead of just me telling you this is what the maths is like. So we're just going to go through an exercise, so we're just going to take our Nanaka, take all the buffs that she has into consideration, and we're just going to estimate how much damage she's going to do with an attack. So the first thing we need to do is get the actual awakened base attack that I told you about earlier, where we just take the base attack that we see in the window. As you can see, it's the base attack that we see here in the middle, 8138, and we're going to add the awakening bonus, which is 7%, so we do a times 1.07, and we get the actual awakened base attack. This is what I call this, probably not what everyone else calls it, but whatever. I'm going to just put on top of that the Memoria bonus. The Memoria bonus, of course, we find over here to the right. Slap that on top of that, and what we end up with is what I called the flat attack, because it's not buffed yet with anything. So yeah, this is basically the attack that should show at the bottom of your character, but it doesn't because the game is a bit weird. And we see that this is the 12,931 that we have got. Now we need to add the formation bonus that we're getting with, because we're on Tercio. It's a 25% bonus, so we slap on another times 1.25 on top of that, and we get the actual total base attack that our character has, which is 16,164. Now, assume the battle begins. We're going to start fighting an enemy, and the first thing we need to do when you fight an enemy is, now that we're in battle, we've got buffs from our Memoria. So the Memoria that I put on top of Nanaka, as you can see, we have a Friends on Nanaka, and we also have a Cubane Knight on Nanaka. They give a total, so the first one gives 20%, the other one gives 25%. That's a total of 45%. However, in this turn that we did, we also had an Nanaka Connect. That's another 37.5% on top of that. So all of that gets plussed up together, gets summed up. And what we actually end up with is a 82.5% right here. So we buff this base value that we have by 82.5% by multiplying with 1.825, and we get the actual buffed attack that Nanaka attacks the enemy with, which is somewhere around 30,000. Now the enemy of course has defense. In this case, like I said, usually enemies in PvE have somewhere around 5,000 to 10,000 defense. Since this is a pretty big boss on a challenge mode, I'm saying probably has somewhere around 10,000, being courteous here to the enemy, assuming it has quite high defense for PvE. And since we're assuming 10,000, what usually happens is you take the buffed attack and you take away from that the enemy defense divided by 3, which we do right here. 10,000 divided by 3, it's about 3,333, and what we get is the actual base damage that attack does, 26,166. If we were attacking outside of a Puella combo with just a regular XL disc and we had no buffs of any kind, no damage up for example, then this would be the damage that we would just do. We would just do 26,000 damage at this point. However, we've got a bunch of stuff that buffs our damage at this point, which is step 2, the buffed damage. So we take the base damage that we just got and we now buff it with disc modifiers, with damage modifiers, and with the element bonus. If you are using a Magia, you would also multiply with Magia bonus, because you know the buff that you can give characters Magia up, that would be like in here as times Magia buff. We don't have that, so we don't care about that. Now, if we assume that we do a Puella Blast combo, I'm not going to go too much into detail because I have an entire video on this, but if we assume a Puella Blast combo and we're on disc 3, we have 0 charge points, then the disc modifier is 144% or a 1.44 multiplier. Now if we assume neutral element, as we had right here, we're just attacking into a light type, that's neutral element matchup, we aren't weak or strong against light type with Nanaka, so we just do regular damage times 1. Then the damage modifiers come afterwards. So we have our base damage, 100% base damage, and we add on top of that 25% from the damage up, since if we look at our Memoria, what I did was I activated Enhanced Armament, and I think damage up 6 is like 25%, or is it 30%? I think it's 25%. I'm too lazy to look it up right now because it takes like 5 seconds. Let's just say it's 25% because I've already done the math with this. So it's 25% from that. We add on top of that, that's a plus right here, the blast up, that's 75% from Nanaka Connect, which gives us a total of plus 100%, or 100% plus 100% is 200%, or writing it as a number is just 2. So it's a 2 modifier that we do. Important enough, if you get a critical hit, you just take whatever you got and you add a +1 to that. So this would be like a 2 + 1 for if you get a crit. Interesting enough, this number right here can only go up to 3. So 3 right here is the highest you can possibly get. It does not go higher than 3. No, it can only go up to 3. However, if you crit, still adds a +1 to that. So the maximum possible you can get is maxing out damage modifier at a 3, and then +1 with the crit. So or just put it into the actual game, the highest you can get is a +200% from all sources, like damage up, damage increase, blast up. +200% is the maximum we could get with all of those together. So these are all of our modifiers. Let's smack them all right in. I didn't put the element modifier in here, but element modifier is ×1, so who cares? So we're taking our base damage that we have, we're adding on top of that disc modifiers, we're adding on top of that damage modifiers, which is ×1.44 ×2, and we get the actual final damage, 75,358, which seems about right on the third disc. We didn't actually get to see the third disc, and it would have done more damage than the disc before that, because blast gets stronger the later it is in the combo. So it would have done somewhere around 75,000 somewhere around 75,000 damage probably. I don't know the exact defense that my enemy has. This is like an unknown. I estimated it to be 10,000. But if it's a bit off from 75,000, we know that the enemy has like more or less attack than what we estimated. Maybe it has like 15,000 defense, we don't know. But 75,000 seems about right, especially once you actually realize that there's a typo right here. Once you see what it does as a critical hit, instead of a ×2 right here, it would be a ×3, because we just do 2 + 1, which is 3. And this gives us 115,000, and I think we did somewhere around 107,000, 110,000. I didn't quite remember the damage, but we did somewhere around over 100,000 with one of those crits in there on the second disc. So since the third disc is stronger, we are kind of around the right ballpark. So we can actually kind of see that this calculation is actually quite right. We didn't screw anything up. So yeah, this is just a bonus for all of you guys. Hope you learned some stuff today and hope you understood what it is that makes Nanaka. To give a TLDR, what is it that makes Nanaka so good? She just does everything so well. She doesn't. The only weak point she has is that she doesn't really have a good way to get Magia out because she only has one Excel disc. But who cares? She just kills stuff with Blast anyway. So her only weakness isn't really a weakness, and even though she doesn't really have one thing that she does amazingly well outside of maybe Connect. She does everything at such a high level that as a complete package, the complete package of Nanaka across the board is just really darn good and competes with most SSRs actually in power level. So that was that, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys next time. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys next time.